Welcome to Potentials. This is Leja, and today we have Christine on the show again. I'm so glad to have you back because I've been having this feeling that I need to have you back on and talk to you. Just a gut feeling, an intuitive feeling, which leads to our first little thing that we just discovered. We were talking about language and how, it does weird things, and especially English. And the word intuit came into my mind, like intuitive, intuition, and maybe you're into it, maybe you're not, right? And where does intuit come from? It comes from inside, inner guidance, whatever. So then you told me something very interesting.
So I just have to say, and hi everyone, I'm really glad to be back and have this chat and synchronicities for all y'all listening. Synchronicities are a thing. So as soon as she said that, I started laughing because I said, did you know I worked for Intuit, as in the company, the one that does QuickBooks and time tracking and TurboTax in the States? Like, it's a massive. And I was part of a startup that had merged into Intuit. So great.
Intuit.
Yeah, no, it was great fun. We always had fun with those puns at work. Uh,
Wow. Yeah.
and I became an expert in that place where I haven't worked there for a couple years, but I could still go back now. And
Right.
the amount of knowledge that I have in there, like it was good. And I ended up, just for part of my like personal thing of how fun the world is and how you get all these different experiences, which this is going to tie in what we chat about, all these different experiences to understand empathy and compassion and humanity and how we're all one, trying to get through this earth school together so that we can all learn what unconditional love is really. That unconditional love and that autonomy, just like really appreciating everybody in each of their own journeys. And I was a global pride leader
Oh,
at
wow.
Intuit for a year. I started the Pride chapter. I helped start the Pride chapter in the Boise place where I was, and then eventually became one of the global ones the same time that COVID was hitting and all the legislation was going out. So I helped Intuit get on those anti-gay legislation things.
Amazing.
Yeah, so
That's incredible.
it was a crazy journey. Like,
Yeah.
and then the fact
Good
that
thing you got
we could
into it
take
at that
this
point.
right? And but it's, I only say that because those are a lot of, like, I worked there for 3.5 years, so it was a very short time of having a lot of really memorable, impactful moments. And you had a intuitive feeling to reach out to me with the word into it. So can we just talk about how awesome it is, the layers that come in when you actually open up and listen to source? It can
Yes.
be 3D tangible. I worked at a place called Intuit, all the way to an intuitive connection of inner understanding. I like,
Understanding.
we'll talk about the hearing about the standing when we go through the language thing. That'll make sense, but just getting that knowledge that cannot be unwound and
Mm,
deep in your soul. Yeah.
amazing. Yes. That just it just blew me away right there. Like just that whole wow. You can't make this stuff up. It's just
No.
it happens. It's synchronicities. It's like what you said. And those have been happening. The number of synchronicities have been happening to me like almost constantly. It's just like nonstop coming at me. So I kind
Yeah.
of it's like when you're on the right track, you know. That's how you kind of know. Well, you already know, but it's like just validation, which is really nice to have.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
cool.
So I this kind of semi segues into what I wanted to chat with you about, and it's language ultimately. with a big focus on the English language. And I want to say that for anyone who's listening, if you have the luxury, I mean luxury of being able to speak multiple languages, then I think you yourself, if English was your second language or third language or whatever down the line, you yourself would look at it and be like, there's something a bit funky about this language. And it's kind of fun, you know, people make fun of it all the time on TikTok with different ways of spelling words and how you have to pronounce vowels differently depending on what consonants are around it, but that doesn't even apply 100% of the time and all of that, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's great, great fun. Well, I want to bring in two things that eventually will go into this language, but ultimately I want to talk about how the world, as I've kind of been reflecting and observing and gathering all this information from all these sources that I can, you know, all over the place, it looks like there's a big chess game going on, right? If you play chess, you'll understand, because in chess you have to know so many moves ahead. You have to anticipate so many moves ahead even before the first piece has been moved. You got to like be able to picture that board. I'm a decent chess player. I had the honor of being able to play with a top chess player down in New Zealand. He was ranked #1 for in the Maori community for years. Like, he traveled and he was great fun. He never let me win, and it was great because it was just challenge after challenge, right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that he told me, he always would say I had a really good end game, and I just needed to work on my beginning. But once I could kind of see the end, I was really good at getting everything into the place at the end game. And I was kind of just thinking about all of this, and you know how when you're reflecting and staring off into space and then weird ideas kind of connect together, and I was like, you know, it feels like we're in an end game right now. And
Yes.
there's something going on where like all these pieces have been moved into place, and then there's an end game. And I was like, who would be controlling those pieces? And then the easy answers are like governments. Okay, yeah, government, sweet. And then we can go into this conspiracy world and be like, okay, yeah, secret cults, like, you know, Skull and Bones and Illuminati and all of those fun words, whatever, you know. And then it's like, well, to be fair, how would it be an end game right now? Because we've been around for a really long time. This earth has been around for a really long time. So if someone was playing the ultimate chess game, where did that start? And in many cultures around the world, we have all these mythological stories of something deciding that it was better than what created it. In the Gnostic, it's the urge and the demiurge. In Christianity, it's Lucifer and God. In I think in the Quran, I don't want to, no, I can't remember. I don't want to make assumptions, but I think it's similar to the Luciferian pride kind of idea, where there is there's just so many different ones. Oh yeah, we've got like Greek mythology where there was but Cronus's kids, the Titans, had to kill him because he kept eating. You know, there's like so many different things where there was just a first, and then something goes, I think I can do better.
Yes.
And then we end up in a dualistic place where there's left and right, up and down, all over the place, right? And it's like, okay, so if that something was like, I can do better, that's when the chess game started, if we think about it. And if we all feel like we're in the end game part right now, and I'm not saying that just from like how they're trying to paint everything in the world. And the sad thing is by the way, if you're following the news and, you know, putting good energy in all these places, make sure to expand your horizons and look at the places that are being neglected. One of which being the Congo, Republic of Congo right now.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane homicide. And it's just so that we can keep having these. It's really, really bad. So if you are a person that kind of stuff sits on your heart, and you are there because you know you want to push that good energy into that space, then make sure to expand and don't just focus on the places that the media is focusing on, because there's more. There's more.
Yeah.
Like, and the Congo isn't the only one. It's all over,
Right.
all over. So just, expand to the whole globe, really. Just expand to the whole globe. Like, anything that causes focus is going to cause division, and division is what the end game is. That's what it started with, and that's what it's going to end with. So if you yourself are feeling divided over something, then work that out, because ultimately we got to get to that merge where we can accept that some of us like to eat strawberry ice cream and some of us like to eat mint chocolate chip ice cream, and that's okay, because that's
Yes.
really all it comes down to. As long as we're not hurting anyone else, it's fine.
Right.
So going back to, sorry, tangented off, and then we'll go back. So I heard this chat, and I think the first place I heard him on was My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast, which is excellent for
Yes.
everybody. And his name is Paul Stobbs.
Oh,
He
right. Yes.
he did research on the Nephilim, and he started looking into just the symbolism, because ancients love symbolism. There's like reasons why there's hieroglyphics versus words and that kind of stuff. Again, we'll get into this language thing. And he started noticing that clowns, like, why are people usually scared of clowns? Like, it seems to be an inherent kind of like reaction where clowns don't necessarily bring comfort.
I thought it was always that movie. I didn't see it. That's why I'm not afraid of clowns, because I don't watch scary movies on purpose because I don't
I
want
love
to.
how you said that the movie's name is It. So you actually said the movie's name when you said I
Oh,
didn't see it.
it's so wow, the language. That's
Yeah.
so weird. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
If that movie, so clowns were around way before that.
Right, of
It was
course, yeah.
part of the whole like the circus kind of charade,
Right.
like that. And what Paul Stobbs does is he kind of uncovers all of this. He realizes that every circus that we know, the P.T. Barnum's, the was Ridley's, I can't remember the name, but anyways, they all were Freemasons that
Yeah.
had started these. And so it was kind of showing like the ritual in the public's eye. This is his theory that he kind of unpacks. His YouTube channel is great, and he goes through a lot of it. He goes through modern music and does this. But what I wanted to focus on was his symbolism of the clown and the Nephilim, because he talks about how the Nephilim, going back in like ancient texts and actually uncovering this, it refers to serpents. It refers to kind of like a reptilian sort of feature. So big wide eyes, big smile, shimmering kind of skin. And so when you think about how a clown, it's got pale skin, bright, fiery. Oh yeah, that's right. Fiery serpent. Because they said the Nephilim was connected to the seraphim that then mated with the women. So what they produced was like these red, pale, really tall, red-haired things.
Giants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
giants. Yeah, and
Right.
that had like kind of scaly skin that sort of reflected in the sun.
Okay.
And big massive mouths and big wide eyes, and because they ate energy pretty much, it was like taking so we consume in this 3D world. We have to eat food, it has to go through our bodies and do all that stuff and do its thing, because that's where we're at. In those higher levels, energy is what they consume. So this was an energy, like a half energy consuming being, but then in a body that consumes like things. So of course they ended up eating flesh. That's they just consumed. It just was a constant hunger, right? So the red lips to symbolize the blood and everything like that. And then the frill to symbolize the like how there's those dinosaurs that had the like, frill that goes up and like different things. And then also the diamond outfit that symbolizes what we see in like snakes and what you see on different the scales, how it has like those diamond
It
sort of
just
thing.
turned 333 here, just as you're saying all this. That's really weird.
I
Okay, go
love
ahead.
I love it. Yeah, so that is the connection of the symbolism of how we are still replicating Nephilim. And in the Western culture, we're really silly. We all just had Halloween, saw everybody running around in their little outfits and everything. We're really silly because we think in our mind that copying the thing scares it away. And in a lot of other cultures, you will see that they won't have anything to do with it. Like they just, I saw this really funny TikTok. It was this little tiny girl, and she was walking through the forest with her parents, and they come across this little, like, it looked like it was a little hutch thing that someone had made ages ago, moss all the top, just wood's falling over, and it looked like a little like cave. And she's like, da da da. And she just goes, nope. And then turns around and it pitches to someone else is like, that child is safe. That child knows not to play. Like that child, like it was
Yeah,
really great.
child is in touch with her intuition.
Good circle. Yeah. And so in that kind of sense, like Western culture kind of mocks it, as in they would have gone into the thing and was like, "Bo bo bo, ha ha," whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas some of these other cultures are like, let's just leave it. Let's just not even
Yeah.
play with it. And so Paul Stobbs kind of talks about how that was the play of the Nephilim. And that's when I started thinking about the chess game thing and the end games. And it's like, oh, you know what? It's way easier to get someone else to do your job for you. Just sit back and watch.
Yeah.
So division is one. And we know that, divide and conquer. And I don't know if y'all have seen that other thing that's been going around where it's like, how often do you think about the Roman Empire? Well, I would argue that's impossible not to, since we still live in it. I mean,
Good point.
it's the Roman Catholic Church that we hear of all the time, which still uses the same symbolism of that. The way that every parliament that's under the Commonwealth, and then even our American structure, it's modeled after the Greek and Roman structure that was there. So it was intentional. That's intentional. Someone just figured it out and started talking about it on TikTok. There is, for lack of a better word, there's programming that goes on in our day-to-day life to make us feel comfortable and to get us stuck in this place. And this is where it's really important to remember that there's still a game. There's still a game. Whether, and if you are an atheist and just believe that what's here is here, there's still a game. 1% of the world has all of the wealth.
Right.
There's a game. So what we need to do is we need to stop being the pawns in their game.
Yes.
And the way that we can stop being the pawns in the game is, first of all, to be wise to it. So knowledge is okay. Dig in, dig deep. Cognitive dissonance may happen, and that is okay. Because what you do in that moment is just take a few deep breaths, look at your body, realize it's still here. Look at your surroundings, realize nothing's going on. You just had a moment of revelation, and breathe it in and see what happens. Because you'll start to realize the birds are still chirping outside. You'll realize that the sun's still rising and setting. And for people who are in areas of the world right now where these chess players are actually causing legitimate destruction to your life, I am sorry. And I don't even know what to say or what to do. And there is no way that I could even imagine. Like, all I do is continue to push out as much love, unconditional love, as possible, so that people will make choices realizing that we are all humans. And I saw on TikTok something beautiful that was circulating again, and it's there's this artist, Martin Yesu, who's saying one day I did, you know, yeah, yes.
Yeah,
Everybody Google this one. Well, there
I love
was,
him. I actually saw him in concert once. So
oh,
yes,
brilliant.
amazing.
There
He's
was
got great attitude.
a group that got a whole bunch of people over in Israel from all corners. So they brought them over from Palestine, Israel, all these different people, and they put them in this massive pavilion, and they all sing that song together in different languages.
That's beautiful.
And it's circulating again on TikTok, which is brilliant because there was a time where those individuals, because they had services at different times of the day and week, they would have they would have the other ones look after their children while they
Right.
were in service, and then they would swap back and forth. That was before all of these like things happened, where now there's you know, they put every word you want onto it, where we're just trying to divide and like point fingers, and it's at the end of the day, we're all human.
We're all wearing meat suits.
Yeah. And so
Exactly.
that's why cognitive dissonance is going to happen as you try to unpack all of this, because it's going to come down to the whys that you do something. And the reason why you want to ask yourself those whys is because you never want to be pushed back to the wall and someone asks you why, and it's because that's the way it is. Because you don't know, then you don't know why that's the way it is. What is your way? And with this, one of the things that I'll bring up is the word I grew up in a Christian English speaking area. So a lot of my tool house that I pull out of is that, and then I try to unpack. Now, I did enough religious studies to know that for any place that you are around the world, you can do the same with your own. Just dive in and unpack. There will be you know, there will be dictionaries, there will be similar concordances, there will be something for any text that you've got where you can dive in and unpack. With this one, I'm going to look at the New Testament, because there's a couple words I want to focus on. One is sin, because that seems to be the one that people can use fear, guilt, shame, and pull us in really well with. And then the other one is love, because that one we use willy-nilly, like, you know,
Yes.
I love pizza kind of thing. So
Yeah, yeah.
we're gonna check out those. And I wanted to start with sin first, because I want the coin, there's a few different Koine Greek. So Koine Greek is the main Greek that we have got the New Testament in. So that's what, if you go to any kind of biblical scholar or theologian, they're going to refer to this Koine Greek. That was around that time that it was written. That was the Greek that was around, and it's Koine for anyone who wants to Google. And I've got a couple of links that I'll send over to Elijah afterwards, and she'll have it all linked up so that you've got that. But I'm just going to read from it for right now. So, so the first thing is there's multiple words for sin. There's 1, 2, 3 that I have on this list, and I've seen other ones refer to other. So 3. So think first, English language, we have one word for sin. The people who were writing these scriptures to try to give us understanding, to break away from whatever this word sin is, had 3 words. That right there tells you that we're probably missing a bit, unless you had some really good pastors, you had some really good like notes in your Bible or whatnot that tells you this. It would be hard. So the first one that we're going to focus on is harmatia. I'm sure I'm probably not saying it correctly, but that means to miss the mark.
Mhm.
And you hear this one a lot: miss the mark, fall short of the glory of God. But wait a second. Fall short of the glory of God. That seems like that might have been added later. To miss the mark sounds like that was what used in that context in that time. So that's the first thing that's really fun to do when you're reading these. There's a lot of, and I believe this, that language and writings and what can be timeless. So you will get an understanding for you in that space right then. But there was also an intention when the author was writing that down in the context, in that social context that was going on. So they intentionally used this word miss the mark. And if you think about it around then, what was going on all the time? There was people, archery, right? Everyone probably knew how to use a bow or at least make one. So miss the mark would be missing the bullseye as an archer would.
Right.
Now, if there are 7 archers lined up and there are 7 targets, if Archer 1 shot his arrow to target 7 and hit it right in the bullseye, would that be missing the mark?
Interesting.
I don't think he would get the gold medal
Yeah.
because his part of that whole the rules of the game was that that's your line, that's your target, and you got to hit that mark.
Right.
So how do we know what each other's marks are? Truly.
Yeah.
Because even if I'm standing right where I'm supposed to, and I've got my bow cocked and I'm looking at my thing, and someone comes beside and is like, hey, I think you need to move a little bit over to the left. They aren't standing where I'm standing, so they actually don't have that perspective. They'd have to somehow get inside my body, look through my eyeballs, and then give me that advice.
Right.
Everything is in our perspective, which means that we choose whether or not to take that on board. So in that moment, if someone did whisper, I think you need to go a little bit to the left. In that moment, I can go, let me reassess. Hey, they're right. I'm going to step over. I have my why. I reassessed. I took their advice. I reassessed. I stepped over and then I shot my mark and I got it. Excellent. Work together, everything like that. Had I just stepped willy-nilly to the left without reassessing the shot, odds are I would have missed because I didn't take time to reassess, i.e. I didn't know my why. I just ran for it. So I'm going to have to sit there and practice on that target a couple more times so that I understand how to get the mark. And that was the one that I wanted to focus on the most. That was just one. So remember I said there's 2 other words for sin that I've got.
No, that was a good one.
And that was just one. So you yourself walking through life, whatever that sin is, the thing that brings on, because it's kind of moved into this world where it's something that could bring on guilt or shame or anger. It brings on those, I guess, the 7 deadly sins, which I just saw a really cool TikTok on that too. Yeah, it's great. And so it I'll send you the link for that TikTok because that one goes through the chakras and the sins the 7 deadly sins that are associated with the chakras to help you alleviate. It was really interesting because the first one associated with the root is sloth. And so if we go back to this missing the mark kind of thing, I personally in my life have had some ups and downs where I have not been hitting the mark. And when I saw this TikTok, I was like, that's it. Like the sloth. I just got to get over this sloth because I was a bit depressed for a while. I just got down inside myself and I was trying to stay positive and doing what I could for the day, but I could do a little bit more. And so it was just kind of cool hearing that to be like, and oddly enough, I have a lot of like lower back pain and like all this. And I was like, if I get moving, that'll probably get better. So I figured out my first mark to try to hit, so I'm not too heavy on myself.
Well, now you're also saying about the why too. If you know your why, then you kind of know what you're aiming for, right? So I like that. And I just think that the thing with when people get hung up with the word sin, they start to condemn themselves. And then it just takes them further away from the mark because they're like, they don't even want to try anymore. They're just
Yeah.
like, I give up. I can't even hit the mark. I can't even, you know what I mean? So I feel like it's better if you don't look at it like it's such a, like making it a game is better because when you're
Yes,
just, you're just, shooting arrows, you're not like, you don't condemn yourself if you miss one or two. You don't condemn yourself, like even if you keep messing up, you're gonna like, well, I'll just try next time. You know what I mean? Like you don't, it's not a big deal. It's a game. That's all it
exactly.
is. Yeah.
And you don't intentionally aim to miss,
Right.
you're still trying, right?
Exactly.
And I wanted to say you going into the chess game that we were talking about before, and how there are certain things at play that want us to miss the mark and continue to miss the mark. And the reason why is because they just want us
Yes.
and comfortable. Because if we're distracted and comfortable, then we won't do anything.
Right.
Let's be
And
so
distracted from
focused.
your why.
Yeah.
Distracted from your why. Because that's
Yeah.
really what it is you're here, you have a mission while you're here on Earth. Anybody that's here on Earth, you're here for a reason. And anything that you're causing you to miss the mark is trying to keep you from accomplishing your mission. That's really all it is.
Yep.
Because it is a game. It's like if you're playing Mario or whatever, your goal is to, to get to the next level or whatever. And so everything that comes at you is trying to keep you from getting to the next level. And that's all this game is. Same thing.
Yep. I so agree. And that's where, again, cognitive dissonance is going to happen, because when you ask yourself those whys, there's going to be some of them where it's like, I can tell you my first cognitive dissonance, and I can actually remember feeling like almost like looped out. Like, and there was no drugs or alcohol involved. I was at Mount Holyoke College. That's where I did my undergrad. And the Da Vinci Code came out.
Oh,
And I was doing biblical studies, ancient studies, all this. And the guy who wrote it, Dan Brown, went to Amherst, which was one of the schools that we had a little 5-school consortium in. So all of us were like, "Ooh, it's like a peer, you know." And so it was kind of just a funny little time. I read that book, and the idea that Jesus had a baby and there is a bloodline with his blood in it threw me for a loop. It threw me for a loop. I had many nights just there was no way I was going to talk to anyone about this, because I had a very conservative family, and they had just been like, "Yeah, you're crazy to even think something like that would be true."
right.
That there I did not have people around me that allowed me to explore my why. And that was hard. So I couldn't have those conversations. It was like, and this is something I noticed in myself. I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. We're all trying to work this out. But if someone's chatting to you about something and you start feeling like flustered inside, like something's going on, like it might be because you've got a why in there that you got to work out. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with them. And yeah, did we talk about the speck in the plank last time? In the eye? I can't
I
remember if we talked
don't
about
think
this.
so.
Because I was thinking there's in the New Testament, Jesus
Careful.
talks
Right.
about, remove the plank out of your own eye before trying to poke at the speck in someone else's. And
Yes.
I had a really cool visual of that, where it's more just like a reflection. Because if I actually had a massive stick in my eye and I was looking at Elijah, it would reflect in her eye like a little speck. So first of
Right.
all, I would not see that speck if I did not have that plank. And
That's
second of
cool.
all, that speck has nothing to do with me. That's her journey. I got to remove my plank. So I don't even see the speck anymore. It
That
doesn't.
is brilliant. I love that. I love that. Oh, that's a great idea. Yes.
So that's
Wow.
what I try.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because everyone's
That,
got a journey. So I try to listen if someone's in a journey, and you know, and this kind of goes back into the language thing of consent. Yeah, it's hard, but you always gotta seek consent. and I used to be really bad with this, with just jumping into conversations or wanting to give my 2 cents on something or whatnot. And I'm trying to be much better. When people ask for advice or they ask for an idea, then I have consent to share whatever.
Right.
But if I were to just come and be like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't ask for consent. And I think that's why it's really cool for those improv crowds or whatnot. They have one of their little games is and why. You have to continue the conversation and why. There's no end. So it's sort of just letting that flow continue.
Yeah.
So yeah, consent's a huge thing. And you've actually had a couple people on your show that sort of semi referred to it. Brandon actually referred to it directly for the people who are currently claim to be U.S. citizens, about your sovereignty and what you have consented to. Highly recommend looking at. I will send you the links for that one too, so that you can people. That would help if you're a U.S. citizen. I'm personally trying to go through it. I haven't gotten anywhere to give any kind of advice yet, but
there are certain words that you can say, keywords that you use to reclaim your sovereignty. I do know that much. I'm not sure. I don't know a lot of detail about it.
Yeah,
but I've watched a few little videos here and there.
There's a couple forms and stuff that you can send in, and you can become a state national, which is what it was before 1789, I want to say.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
before the corporation.
Once you do that, you can say these certain keywords to, you get pulled over.
Yep.
And they know that that's, what you've done, and they can't do anything to you.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. But that's one of those things that you don't just do it willy-nilly. So consent is huge. But the thing is you have to take on board it on both sides. So this is where last time we chatted about full autonomy and unconditional love. Now, autonomy means you get to do, whatever you want. But the unconditional love means that you take on board the 3 principles, which is do no harm. Like it's love. What they say the 3, but the biggest one is like it's do no harm to anyone. Don't take property or anything like that, and don't make nefarious contracts. And that goes down to the consent. Make sure people know what they are consenting to. And
it's like being impeccable with your word as well, right? Of the 4
exactly.
Agreements, the first agreement is being impeccable with your word. So that's part of it. Don't make any agreements that you shouldn't make.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the whole consent thing. And I think, like, I love the words that Jesus left in the New Testament, where it was just like all about free will, all about breaking chains, all about the good news. Another thing, Greek gospel, it just means good news. Good news. Go and share the good news that I've shared with you. You are free from having to be in these contracts.
Well, I also thought it meant God's spell, meaning that God, you're like under contract with God now, instead of being, what I mean?
I still have the Greek stuff up, so let me just
I just thought like those 2 words, it's gospel, but it's, to me, in English it means God's spell, because you're like, you've contracted with God instead of with the others.
That's great what you just did there. So
I don't know what
here's the English language. There's a danger of the English language. So it does not mean that in the Greek. It just means good news. It just means good news. There is no contract. It just means share the good news that there's no contracts. So the English language has a way of something that we feel like is good news.
Right.
We break it and we make it a contract.
Yes. See?
And that's where you got to be careful about your words. And that's another thing a couple of your other people hint at. And one of them that they talked about, understand versus understand. And
Yes, that was me and Brandon again.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I really encourage Black's Law, or even if you want to like TikTok Black's Law and weird words or something like that, you will find a whole bunch of stuff. But understand comes up a lot, because if I were to say to Elijah, do you understand? And she says yes, that means she has consented to stand under me of whatever it was that I just said before.
Yes, and that's the what most authority figures will say to you is, "Do you understand me?" Even
Yeah.
in the military, you understand? You know, like that's one of the things they say. You know, it's like, oh wow, now I understand. Now I
Well,
understand.
and academia, training
Yeah,
in our jobs, everywhere. Do you
anybody
understand
in
what
authority,
God? Yeah.
yes, asks that question. That's amazing.
And
Jordan Maxwell, who's also Brandon referred to,
yeah.
does a lot of talking about that too. Yes.
And this is the clever of the game, going back to the chess game that has been played. Those aren't all demons. I'm saying that stuff. When I
Yeah,
was like helping teach people things and I said the word, do you understand? I was not meaning that.
right.
But see, that's the play. This
Yeah.
is why we have to really take on board what it is. And even in speaking right now, some of the words I'm using now, there's probably spells going on
Right. And
that
you
I
don't
don't
even know what you're
understand.
doing.
So the
Yeah.
best that I can do is make sure the intention that's going behind the energy of these words is as
Right.
loving as possible
Yes.
and
That's
as soft as possible, not jaggedy or whatnot. Like think of it
right.
like a nice sine wave.
Yes. Yeah. And also just, yeah, really it's about intent. As long as your intent is pure
Yes.
and comes from your heart chakra and it's love, then words kind of can fall away. A lot of times you don't even need them, right?
And that's what I wonder if I can share the screen on this one because
Oh,
this would be
if
fun.
you can I give you, I think I can give you permission to do that. I
Yeah.
have to
Let's
give
let's see
you
if I can
permission.
make it.
Let me see. I have to make you the host to do that though, which is fine. I don't care. Um, I did this before. Um, yes, make host. There you go. Should have done. Can you do it now?
Yeah.
Yay! I remembered.
Awesome.
My God.
All right. Did that show up on your side and is it big enough?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. So the first thing that I want to point out is that when all these scriptures showed up, this stuff, these numbers, everything, they didn't exist. We just got a big long list of things. And it was a lot of monks and scholars that went through and added these. So this right here, like think of it like you were writing a book report and then you just needed to add like a little wording thing to like separate the sections. All the
Yes.
verses and chapters and everything that we see in this religious text, that was added after. Like they were written all in like big blocks first. So that was added after to kind of help and go. But you have to remember if something was added after, it has a little bit of the person in there. So that's why you just always have to go back to your why. Now, right here where it says Jesus reinstates Peter, I'm going to go through and talk about this. I wouldn't have summarized this chapter as that, but I don't want to say that I'm better than all these other scholars. But with what my understanding is, I wouldn't have that one as my why.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with other people having it as theirs. But as you
Right.
go through and see this right here, it looks like a whole bunch of gobbledygook. But what it is it's called the interlinear Greek Bible. And so it's quite cool. It's got the Greek here, and then it's got the like alphabetic you know, of the Greek, so you can kind of try to pronounce it.
Oh, right. The transliteration or whatever you want to
That's
call
what
it.
it is. Thank you. Yeah. And then down here, it's got the English that we're pretty used to. And then it's telling you what it is, adverb, conjugative, all these things to kind of help. So if you wanted to dig in, this is a great place to dig in. And you'll notice, see their little, like, they link. So you can really go. This passage, this is John 21:15. I love this passage. I just used the word love.
Yeah.
Because it is about love. And this is where Jesus had just had breakfast. He'd been crucified, came back, had breakfast with the disciples, and then was like, Peter, hey, let's have a walk. And so they're cruising down the beach, and Jesus is like, hey, do you love me? And Peter's like, yeah, I love you. He's like, look after my sheep. So if we have the English Bible, that's what we see, right?
Right.
We are missing a huge part of this text, because similar to how we went over sin, there are 4 words for love in Greek. 3 of them we're pretty familiar with.
Right.
Agape, you hear that a lot in different things. Phileo, you said that in like Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Phileo.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yep.
city of love.
Yep. Eros. Hear about that, erotic and all that kind of stuff, right? So they have 3 different, so they're able to tell you what level of love. Now, agape, we don't even actually know what that means.
Yeah.
We have
That's more of a spiritual higher love, right? A higher frequency love.
exactly. It's something that it's up there. We don't necessarily know. We can easily see that philia, the way that it's set up, it has to do with brotherly love. We can see where that is. That is just like, hey, mate, you know, got your back, you got my back. We got this. We're going in. Agape usually was reserved for like into really intimate settings, you know, or
Somebody you would die for, I
religious.
think.
Yeah, yeah. And so it wasn't, you didn't kind of use it willy-nilly.
Right.
That's why this passage is pretty significant. So here they say, they dined. It says that Jesus goes, Simon of John, love you me? So he's pretty much saying, do you love me more than these? Now, right here, you see that love you is agapes.
Right.
Do you love me? Or
Right.
these? And he
Right.
says to him, yes, Lord, you know that I dearly love you. He did not respond with agape.
Ah.
He responded with philo.
Aha.
So Jesus again asks him, second time, do you love me? Agapes. And he goes, yeah, I dearly love you. Philo. Third time, do you love me? Ooh. It's this one, he changes it. Third time, so you dearly love me. There it's Phileus.
Yeah.
And then now Peter is sad. Dearly love me. So we're still here. But see, this is what I'm saying is you can go back through and you can see now that you know that when love shows up, you got to know which one was being used, especially if it was Jesus that was intentionally switching
Right.
it up, because he started that conversation.
Right.
So this is why, like, I scrolled too far. This is why I can understand with just the English, this would make sense. Jesus reinstates Peter. It's a big thing with the Catholic Church of where it comes back. Makes perfect sense. I personally think there's a lot more to go on there. I don't think he was necessarily reinstating him there. I think that's why we get the script, the story in Acts, where Peter gets hit with the holy flame and then chats with 5,000 people. I think there was more to come. So I personally, just knowing that the love is different,
Yeah.
looking at Greek, it just wouldn't be here that I would put that.
Right.
So that's an example of love. Now, when I say full autonomy and unconditional love, going back to that whole like judgment thing and consent and all of that, it's got to be that agape. It's got to be that just, you just got to trust that everything will work out. And you just got to choose love in that moment. And it's not like, this world is not planned for that, because this world has a game that's being played. And
Yeah.
the game is all of the sins. And like, we have been set up from the beginning to, like, money is the biggest one. Like, you can, nearly every spiritual institution, that like religious institution that's been established, will justify the need for a job and the need for, money and income, because that's what you look after. Because you can do that. You can do that in the text. You can pull that out to say why it is. But sadly enough, if you actually look at the teachers and the prophets and the main, characters that we focus on in these texts, they're saying the opposite.
Yes. Right.
So this language that we have, that we're using day to day, we need to make sure we have the knowledge behind it so that we know what we are consenting to. Because that's the only way that we get out of the end game. Just like you mentioned, for US state nationals, if they have the right keywords, they will not be given a ticket if pulled over.
Right.
That's the ultimate end game. So
Yeah.
division was the beginning, which means division's still going to be in the end. Get out of the division.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's the way to do that, is to break contracts and break, all that stuff. And it takes like a while. Like, I mean, far out. How many things do you sign up for just to like download an app on your phone?
Yes.
Terms and agreements and all this kind of stuff. Like, it's
Yeah.
gonna take time, but there's a lot, like we'll figure this out. But it's just being mindful moving forward is really the best that you can do. And you don't have to get overwhelmed, just one thing at a time. Yeah.
Right. That
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Beautifully put, and thank you for sharing all of that, because I think that is really helpful, and you made it, pretty clear. You made it very crystal clear, really, I think. Um,
Awesome.
yeah. So I feel like it's the begin like you said, it's baby steps, but it's the beginning steps to full on freedom, which is what everybody wants. Nobody doesn't want to be free, you know?
Right?
So I feel like it's gonna happen. Yeah. I foresee that, because I like to look at the big picture. I
Yeah.
don't like to see, like, oh, all the little looking at all the pitfalls, which is good to know where they are. But if you focus on them too much, you end up falling in them. Even it
Yeah.
probably more so than if you intuitively just kept walking straight,
Mhm.
because if you're on the right path, you're on the right path, you know, and you don't have to be afraid.
I love that. I like seeing it like a canvas. If you were like standing in front of a big, massive canvas, let's say it's like a wall size, 50 feet, 100 feet across, 50 feet up, right? Big, massive canvas someone painted of this beautiful scene. But if you walk right up to it and you put your face right in front of it,
Yeah.
like you're just gonna see some weird, dark, like shadowy thing. You gotta step back. You gotta
Right.
step. But taking that time to look at how the details were made in that spot, 100%. But like you said, you don't want to fall into the pitfall.
Yeah.
Appreciate what it is, but then step back so you can
Right.
see the whole picture.
Don't get lost in it,
Mm,
don't fall into the painting and then we can't pull you out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, the working out my whys it's been really helpful, of giving that space of letting other people have their whys. You can see journeys a lot
Yeah.
easier. And and the judgment, you can understand why judgment is not for us, because we all have journeys.
Well, right too. And if your journey happens to intersect with another person's journey and your journeys aren't lining up the way you wanted them to, doesn't mean that their journey is wrong because it
Right.
doesn't align with yours. You know, you may cross paths again someday, but it doesn't mean that because they're not doing the way living their life or doing what you want them to do, doesn't mean their journey's wrong. It's just a different one. It's a different path. You don't
Right.
have to be on the same path with everybody.
Exactly. And that's the whole, like, dualism. We don't, there's no way for us to understand what is wrong or right when it comes to someone's journey, as much as we would hate it, especially if they uh, gave us contracts, like verbal contracts or
Yes.
whatnot, and then they weren't able to meet up on those. Like, as hard as it is, we have to just let that all kind
You
of
have
go.
to let it go. You have to release it. Release is like a big word for me lately. I feel
Mm.
like when I start releasing my expectations for other people, that gives me the freedom. That's
Yeah.
what true freedom is because I no longer have expectations for them to behave or act a certain way. Then I'm free
Yeah.
from, I've let go. I've hands off and I can just be free to go in whatever direction I want to, and it's not going to hurt me or them, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. It definitely there. I started singing Nelly Furtado in my head when you said,
Which one? I'll,
I'm
I'll,
like a bird, gonna
I'll
fly away.
if you will,
Yeah.
oh, no,
Um,
yes.
yeah,
I can't get
yeah, because
copyright infringement for that. Sorry.
I just maybe we were under the seconds for it.
Probably.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of when I look at the stuff that's going on, and I'm like, well, okay, what's something tangible I can do right now? So I think I made references last time of voting with your money. So the first thing is what we consume. That's what you could do. And I know financially it can be kind of hard. So it's really just figuring out what it is on there that you can kind of shift from. And just looking up, similar to language, looking up brands, looking up who the investors are in brands and all of that kind of stuff, and making sure that you feel like they're going to be looking after your health and whatnot. One that came to light was Bragg's, Braggs, the
Yes.
apple cider and everything. They've just
Uh-huh.
recently had some big investors that don't necessarily, it was surprising. And I don't
Uh-huh.
want you to get pinged for anything. So it's like, it just research, what
Interesting.
you,
I will
you
do
know,
so. Yes.
and the cool thing about that is usually what's coming up is just how to make your own. Like, and if you eat a few apples a day and you've got your leftover bits, that's really all you need to make apple cider vinegar. So there's different stuff like that. And then me personally, I'm dealing with the sloth so that I can actually do these things. Who would have thought that, like, that was something, you're just scrolling through TikTok and then it's like, oh, that makes sense. I gotta, like, actually do this.
Yeah. Oh man. I love it for that because it just jumps in your face and it's like people think that TikTok is just this innocuous thing and that it's insipid, but it's really there's a lot of real truth on there. Like
Yeah.
if you start looking at the right people, and I will say if you go and I love Brandon. If you go on Expanding Reality on
Mm.
Instagram, he's constantly posting things from TikTok that are really good. And then you start noticing who these people are he's posting, and you go on their TikTok page, they're always posting really deep stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, or funny stuff, depending on what it is.
Totally.
So I recommend going on his Instagram because it's great.
Yeah, I would say the algorithm in TikTok is the closest thing to if you've got a question, and you just click on a couple of those videos and just it'll come up. It'll come up. And it'll give you enough to be able to search. I found a lot of good podcasts, a lot of good topics or different takes on things just through someone was like, hey, I didn't know this and I just learned this today. And it was, it's great fun. And then there is a lot of funny things like how Gen X is like, how are we all raised the same when we all lived in different parts of the world? Like it's just
Yeah.
funny how different things come up. So it's
Yeah.
it's definitely still fun. I know that the powers that be are still in the process, but again, that comes down to the consent thing. If we pay them no attention, if we ignore all of their adverts and we don't click on
Yes.
any of their things or whatnot, then they can't do anything about it, because at the end of the day, they're still going to want to make their dollar. So
Right.
we got to make the better choices of what we personally promote
Right.
and what we tell them we don't care about. Yeah.
Exactly. So the more we care about the right things, if you want to call it right, but whatever, you care about things that are going to be helpful to the greater good or to people in general. If that's what you care about, and you're expressing that by choosing those kinds of links, then you're going to send a clear message, and that's going to be the new algorithm,
Mm-hmm.
or pretty much.
Yeah, and the thing is like we are actually so advanced right now as humanity. And we have been taught for a long time that we're children still. I was trying to this is a funny little my analysis, my crazy theory that has no backup whatsoever, and I'm just going to kind of talk it through real quick. All right, so the boomers' parents came home from World War II and we're like, whoa, we did a solid. We did a solid. We helped out the world.
Yeah.
Well, let's make lots of babies because we're so happy and everybody's free. All right, cool. So the boomers came along. Well, the world didn't really become that beautiful place as quickly as it was supposed to. So they probably already started that little bit of like, wait a second, they sold us something different. It was something else is going on. So the boomers ended up with Vietnam. And so the boomers are like, oh, we can be like our parents. We've got this, right? We're going to be great. So they go over there and they realize it's a bunch of meh. And they're like, hold on, this isn't cool. So they're like, you know what? We'll be different than our parents. We're going to say something about it. Because there was a lot of people that protested Vietnam. And what happened to them?
Yeah. Right. And then
So
they
they
turned
all had
into
kids.
yuppies.
Yes. Yep. So
Yeah.
they all had
Became
kids.
the me generation. Yeah. So
Mhm.
then the next one was, I'm sorry, go ahead, Gen X, right?
Yeah. Next one's Gen X.
That's me anyway.
And so Gen X is neglected because I don't think we've realized how much their parents had like a whole psychological break and probably didn't have the emotional resilience to be able to raise them, because they had this life of knowing what worked. They all had gardens in their homes. They all had all this kind of stuff that worked, to a war, to this where like it was just weird, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, I don't know what to do with these kids.
Yeah.
And so they're neglected. So Gen X survives. And then the millennials come, and the millennials will come. This doesn't seem to be quite right, but by then millennials have technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
So millennials can start being like, it doesn't seem right. No, I don't want to do that. Oh, I can see you've done this for a long time. I don't care anymore. They kind of just started, being, they had the same like apathy that Gen X did, but then they kind of were intrigued with technology because it was like Back to the Future. It was all this. And it's like, let's go. We'll just fix it with technology. Let's go. We got this. Right.
Yeah.
And then, the 90s happened.
Yeah.
Then 2000 happens. So the 90s, we had a couple scares. We had Waco. We had, and I'm talking US centered. I know there was other stuff going on around the world, but here we had Waco. We had Oklahoma City bombing.
Right.
We had Y2K.
Right.
And then come the 2000s come around, and then we get 9/11.
Right.
So my theory is that the chess game made a big move back in the 70s when the boomers tried to use their voice and said, let's make sure to teach them not to use their voice, but to repeat our voice so that the world stays the way it is. And the boomers caring about their kids, not having to go through the same ridicule they went through with Vietnam, taught their kids not to care.
Yeah. Right.
So that they could survive. And now we have Generation Alpha that's coming up now. These are the ones, kids being born now, that are pretty much telling all the TikTokers that they're starseeds.
Yeah.
Like, it's all about frequency and vibration. And
Yep.
I go
Are
and
them.
hang
They
out
are
with my
so-
alien family at nighttime. I come back and I tell my mom about it. And it's like, so if we're going to neglect, what was that? So Gen X, Millennial, and
Zed.
Gen Z. So 3 generations of neglect pretty much. And I'm not, this is generalization. Everybody out there, I know we all tried the best we could. Generalization. This is macro, high macro level.
Yeah.
And so then of course Alpha's like, well, okay. I've got to figure out. So we have higher levels of autism, which means that we, as these upper generations that were told, get over it, put some dirt on it, like move on, whatever, your emotions don't mean anything. We now have to stop and be like, oh, we put all of these regulations in place because we wanted them there for ourselves, but now we have to adhere to them for these children because they're our kids. So in a way, I feel like it's kind of this really beautiful spin of, I think it's great that we are going to be able to give a lot more children time to focus on what they're good at.
Yeah. True. Good. Yes. And my belief is that the word autistic is just another word for starseed because
Oh yeah.
there's different layers of autism, just like there's different gifts within the starseed, group.
I
And,
it, yeah.
and
I think
I've always thought that I was autistic because I did all like I fit a lot of the categories, and then I realized, oh, and I'm just a starseed. That's
I
all it is.
genius. Genius is another one you can throw in there that could interchange it. Yeah. And I was thinking the other thing that was taken away from us in this last century was our time. Because, they told us 8 hours work, 8-hour play, 8 hour sleep, but then they started making that 8 hours work longer, but making it think it was our idea. We want to work more to make more money. We want to do this more. It's all our idea. And now
Right.
we have no time.
And it's not even an 8-hour day because you have the drive time that's involved as well, and then
And
you
then you
get
gotta make sure you have your social engagements and that you're
right,
making sure that you're hitting with your culture around the town and everything and doing all of that. Like, there's a lot of things that you gotta
shopping.
adhere to. And
Yeah,
if you think about it, all of these artists that we hear about, Renaissance or whatever, Mozart, Beethoven, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, all these people, right? They had time. People
right,
gave them time.
right. The most creative people are the ones that had the time to create or were given the time to create. It was a huge gift, you
So
know.
that's another thing to be careful about consent is with your time,
Yes.
because your time is precious. There's something inside of you. You were put here to share it with the world,
Yeah,
and it's your time to help it grow.
right.
And
That
full
is
circle back to language, you got to get your own mark. You got to find what yours is to help it grow.
right, right. And it's that time thing is really important because we don't realize that it's just another kind of currency. It's another kind of energy, really. You know, what are you spending your energy on? You know, because there's two things you can spend, right? Time and money in the English language, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Those are, it's spent. My
I'm sure
time
that
is
was
money is spent.
intentional.
So it's really energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's, and then I think the thing that as one goes through the whys and breaks the cognitive dissonance, you'll realize how malleable time is and money.
Right.
But you got to get to the level of truly believing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that word malleable because that is, I had this visual yesterday of that, of how time and 3D and everything is malleable. It used to be, at one time, it used to be more malleable. In another, probably 100,000 years ago or however long ago, we weren't in this kind of matrix. Before the matrix was really locked down to the way it is now. Things were more malleable. Like you could manifest things pretty much out of thin air, and you you could almost like clay. I was thinking of this, like how you could just make things out of clay.
Mm.
It's almost like that's what it was like to live back then.
That makes
You know?
sense.
Yeah.
Just,
So
yeah, I saw this random thing. It was, I think it was an advertisement that popped up, but my brain went, oh, interesting. And this was the thought that came after it. Well, I mean, I'll tell you the advertisement, then I'll tell you the thought. So the advertisement was for Mercedes-Benz, and it was a car that was wireless driving. And it had a headset,
yeah,
you put on, it had a thing on, right? And then
I
you,
had that in the podcast.
oh, did you? Cool.
Yes. The
So
did you see the one with Frank?
maybe I didn't see that one.
Actually, there's an actual car that's been
Yeah.
made by Mercedes, and we showed what it looked like. And I actually think I
Cool.
included the link in my description if you want to go on it. It's the one Frank Chili. It's the first episode with him, and he shows how there's a headband that you wear, and in this Mercedes, it's thought controlled. Everything is thought controlled. The
So,
whole car.
this is what I thought about. I wouldn't want to drive that thing,
Because your thoughts go in too many
right?
directions.
And then that's when I thought about all the distractions. Like,
Yeah,
I wasn't born here with all these thoughts in my head.
yeah. We'd have
So,
to remove the distractions first. Yeah.
right?
A
And
lot of the distractions are the electronic smog we have around us too. A
yes,
lot of the things that are thrown into our head that we didn't even put in there, you know.
yes.
So that's a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and to your point before of how we were at a place where we could think about and something could be created much faster. I argue that that could happen now if we weren't so distracted.
absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I feel like part of the distraction is has been manufactured.
Yes.
It's manufactured distractions so that we don't get to that point
Well,
because
here's the thing
we
is I
we
was
don't.
told,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. Yeah. And an example would be I was told ever since a young age that I could always go down the street to buy my food. So I never took the time to plant a garden or learn how to do that. And I
Right.
didn't have people around me um that did it enough that it instilled in me how to be able to do that myself as an adult. Well,
Right.
now I'm at this point, I'm like, ooh, that was not a good distraction. That is a
Yes.
skill that I should have, is just a human being on this earth, being able to interact with it and understand its cycles. And, I like, I even have a hard, I love meat, but I have a hard time because I haven't ever been in a situation where I butchered my own animal.
Right. That puts it in a different perspective for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like that's another distraction.
Right.
No, like we've been distracted to be like, oh, you don't need to know that.
It's more of a disconnection even than a
I guess,
distraction.
you know what? I think you're right. I think that's what distractions get to. Distractions get you to disconnect. You're so right.
Yeah. And if we become more connected to Earth, to the planet itself, to nature, then you kind of lose all of that other connection to things that would distract you. I feel like because if you are connected to the earth, you're connected to what feeds you. You're connected,
Yes.
and then you're feeding it back your energy. So it's more of a symbiotic kind of closed circuit kind of toroid field thing happening, you know, and
And
that's good. That's what you want. Yeah.
I agree. And I think as you interact with it more, then you start to notice more things. Like the individual whoever it was that first noticed petrified gigantic trees
Yes.
and having just looking at these massive mountainous structures just a little bit differently. That
Yeah.
one I don't have any, that one definitely I just like has randomly popped up in my feed. But if
Right.
you Google, or even I think there's even some on YouTube, where just giant petrified trees,
Mhm.
and just see some of the stuff that comes up. It's really neat. And
That
it,
and the rocks that look like human forms, like giant human forms.
yeah, yep,
Some of them
yep.
are called sleeping giants because it's like they used to, like they are saying there used to be giants on Earth, and
Mhm.
that a cataclysm took them away. And if you look at nature, you can see how that happened because there's faces in the hillside, and people call it pareidolia. But if you really look at it, it's not pareidolia. It's those are like definitely faces or forms or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, because there's a foothills, they just called them the foothills around us, around Boise.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was convinced they were just called foothills because it was the footprints left from the giants that were walking around there.
That's amazing.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
That that's actually really pretty deep, you know? I mean, that could, and it could be too, you know, it could be true because when you're a child, you're more connected to truth, I feel like. And
Yeah, I've definitely been wondering about little things like that.
yeah, it's a good thing that you can still remember those things, those little bits of truth that you probably were connected to as a child, you know? So I try to write them down if I it hits me. Like, oh, I used to believe this when I was a child. I used to think that. I try to write it down so that I see if it, you know, if anything comes back to me. We were talking the last time about how we used to want to try to fly because we
Yeah.
had memories, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, maybe maybe we will fly.
You know,
I
it's so funny. For some reason, I just wanted to watch a movie last night, and I didn't. I made it through all of Halloween season without watching a scary movie because I don't really think they're worth it anymore. Um, sorry, my dogs are trying to steal my food. Okay. um, I didn't realize that The Shining had a sequel. Did you know this?
no.
In 2019, they made this movie called Doctor Sleep. Ewan McGregor was the main character in it, and he was Danny grown up. So the little boy, right around
Right, right.
grown up, and I don't know how I didn't know about this movie and didn't see it or anything, but I'm glad that I watched it when I did because my understanding of things are way different. It was amazing. What they pretty much did is they went through how people feed on the young and innocent. So there was like a group of witches that would like steal children. FYI, crazy graphic. If any of that stuff, like, don't watch the movie.
Yeah, trigger warning.
It does have
Yeah.
graphic stuff. But uh pretty much it was, they called it the shine. Danny had the shine, and that was the reason why he could see all of those people in the hotel.
Oh,
But the shine is kind of what people would refer to as magic or like gifts or something like that. And so um that group of people were trying to find kids with the shine. Anyways, this little girl ends up being able to communicate with Danny through just like dreams and telepathy. And they start, the way that they do the movie, the reason why I would recommend, there's one scene in particular that you'd want to fast forward for. I'll say is Baseball Boy. When you see that, just skip that bit. That one's crazy gory. The rest of it is pretty you can handle, where it's actually more just like psychological. Because what they do is they play with the difference of the dream world and the real world when they would talk to each other on the astral plane. Like, because ultimately that's what they're doing, right? They're connecting, somewhere else. And then they showed how you could, like, people can get trapped in other people's minds, or someone can come into your mind to steal information. And it was fascinating. It was fascinating. And just kind of talking about with all the things, if there's big chess game going on, different things around that might have nefarious means, best thing that you can do is knowledge and to protect yourself. And ultimately, this little girl, she knew she was powerful. So as soon as something went weird in her mind, she would throw the stuff out, and it like threw them, because they'd been doing this for like centuries, right? They were like old group of people. And lots of parallels into the conspiracy world for all y'all, if you if you watch it. But that girl knew her power. She knew her power, and she was just a little girl. And I think that's the whole thing, that all of these characters that were trying to teach us how to be free, Jesus, Buddha, all of these characters, right? You got to know your power, but in order to know your power, you have to know your why. Because if you don't know your why, then you don't have anything to back on. And they actually play off of that in the New Testament, when there was a couple guys that were trying to shout out demons, and the demon turns and looks at them and is like, oh, they said, out in Jesus' name. And the demon turns and looks at them and is like, I know Jesus and I know Paul, but I don't know you.
Right.
And it scared the crap out of them. So they ran away. And pretty much they kind of got reprimanded, because you can't, don't do something unless you actually got that why all the way
You have,
down.
and you have to own it too. Like that's the thing. Like I think part of knowing your why, it's like a little bit of both. Like if you know that you have powers, then you kind of should know what your why is because they're connected, right? So if you have good intentions, that's part of your why.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using your powers for good, then it's going to turn out okay. But if you're not using your powers for good, then you don't know where it's partly how pure is your heart. So
Totally.
it comes down to all that. So I feel like you can, if you're like, oh no, I don't know my why yet. I can't use my powers. Well, as long as you know that what you want to do is for the greater good, or you don't want to do any harm, and that it's not about you, your
Mm-hmm.
selfish reasons, that you're coming from a space of pure love, then that's really your why.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't like know what it is, you know what I mean? Like it's intent. That's what it is.
Totally. I so agree with that. That just intention is the first. And I think that's why we're told to keep our thoughts captive, like all of that kind of stuff. Like intention is where it all comes down to.
Right.
Because if and it's interesting, there's this other thing that I like to play with, which is the give and take and the give and receive cycle. I think I can't remember if we've talked about this one before. I think I talked about it with Adam on his. But I can see that there's two cycles. There's a give and take cycle. What's in it for me? I'll make sure to give to it what I can, take what I can, everything. That one, it doesn't seem to be even. That seems to be the cycle we're in this world. 1% has
Yeah.
all the wealth. The rest of us are fighting amongst each other. When
Right.
we're supposed to be asking them, why aren't you sharing?
Yes.
And then there's this other one, which is the give and receive cycle. And I really think that that's what Jesus was trying to get at, and all of these other ones, where it's like you give, and then if there's something to receive, it will come. It will be there. It will be there for you. You give and you receive. You do your best with the best at it, and then something will come. And I'm not just saying, you're sitting there with like your hand out alms. It's like, let's say my intention is to we'll go music. Let's say my intention is to mix an awesome song to get out onto YouTube for a few people to listen to, right? Because I really feel like it's got some good heartfelt vibrations that would help one. If that's my intention, I'm not just gonna, that's a thought that goes through my head. I'm not just gonna sit here and be like, all right, well, maybe it'll mix itself. I don't know. You have to actually start kind of putting the
Yeah.
effort behind it so
Right.
that you can actually, you got to give to receive. And that's kind of the whole give and receive. There's this whole thing that in this give and take cycle, everything comes back down to money, time for money, skills for money, uh, living for money. It seems to be a money. It comes back down to that give and take. And whether it's money as in like dollar notes or whatnot, it also can come down to like um like almost like war crime kind of relation of like, well, I won't blow up your city if you don't blow up mine. Like that's give and take as well. Like it's just kind of like you're waiting for someone to slip up so that you can take something. And that's just, this is a theory I have. I don't mean to offend anyone if they say, but with the give and receive, if you're giving out, then you're putting that toroid that you refer to with like earth, if we were fine. If you're giving and then you're allowing the receive, then your toroid can naturally form so that it actually becomes a little bit more effortless. And I think when they say that the path is narrow, what like something is,
the path is narrow, but
the road is wide,
road.
whatever.
Oh, it's 444. Weird. Sorry.
That's funny.
I keep noticing those angel numbers.
It's like, but you know what I'm getting at? It's like the cool spot seems really, really easy.
Yes, right.
But the actual path to take is really quite narrow.
Yeah.
I actually think if you get into that narrow one, it's even easier than the big path.
Oh yeah. They just don't want you to know that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
But oh yeah. So well, that being said, noticing what time it is, we should probably, I don't want to make it too long because people get kind of turned off when the even if the conversation's good, when they first go to click on your video and they go, oh, it's over an hour. Well, I don't have time for that right now. So I try to keep it a little shorter, but
Nice.
we were great.
No, this was a great conversation. This was fun. And I'll get you, I'll send you those links. Everybody else can have some fun playing with language.
Yes, and another cool one is light language, which I won't even get into here because that's a whole other one. But yeah, light language and telepathy and all the kind of angelic kind of languages, that exist. It's that's a whole different type of language that we kind of intuitively know. And once we start tapping into our towers, to our powers, we start to retrieve that. So, in some, in like in the Christian circles, it would be called speaking in tongues, but but in the spiritual circles, it's called like light language. But anyway, yes, it's definitely a power that, and it's a way to communicate and also release some beautiful energy to higher frequencies, um, higher vibrations. So anyway, just a little just side road there.
Fun things for research.
Yes, it's always fun. I love it. So, well, thank you for coming on again. I appreciate that, and this has been a great discussion, um, full of twists and turns and literally and with paths to go on. So branches, yes, and but beautiful branches and full of life. So and love. So
Definitely.
to go back to the beginning, love and love is the answer, and love is all you need. And yeah, what else could I say?
Love and knowing your journey and not stressing about anyone else's.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And if you can't find your why, just know your intent. Know that know your heart, you know, and you're with that. So anyway, thank you again. And you can stick around. I'm just going to say goodbye to the audience, and we will see you next time. Ciao for now.
Thanks all.
No, I can't. All right. Oh, you're the host. That's why I can't do it. You have to do it. Why
Got
can't
it.
you go ahead
I was
and
just, okay, bye y'all.